First. I'm Mark Eichman along with Shirley Min. The debate over the rights of transgender children has become front and center in Delaware. We'll go over what the State Department of Education will do going forward.
And for a small state, Delaware has an amazing number of wide open wetlands. Who helps spearhead efforts to protect them, and can they be sustained for decades to come?
First, your public media news magazine starts now. A controversy that's been raging in Delaware education circles over how transgender students are treated in school took a sharp turn last week. That's when Education Secretary Susan Bunting overruled the task force that she appointed to develop a model anti-discrimination policy for schools statewide. Education reporter Chris Barish has our first look this week. So Chris, what's the new development in this?
Hi, Mark. Bunting has stripped the draft policy of its key provision that generated so much debate, pro and con. It's the one that allowed schools to not notify parents if a transgender student wanted to use a name different from the one they use at home. Under Bunting's revision, parents will have to be notified and give their permission before a student can use a different name.
Maddie Heaney was born in a boy's body with a boy's name. But Maddie knew long before she started school that she was really a girl. She wore girls' clothes and was, in her mind, a princess.
There wasn't a doubt about it. And then as I got older, went into preschool, kindergarten, I noticed people didn't think of me as a girl, and I would get weird looks when I would play dress up or do things that were normal to me.
Maddie's sense of self began wavering by third grade. That's when the boys kept quizzing the classmate who looked like them but acted differently.
Why are you playing with the girls? Why are you playing with stuffed animals and Barbies? Why don't you play sports with us and everything? And that's when I sort of felt very uncomfortable and became really depressed. And I sort of tried to make myself more masculine than I was and tried being the complete opposite person that I was to please everyone around me. It was probably the lowest point of my life. It was awful.
But with the blessings of her family, in 5th grade, Maddie formally began her transition to a girl. In June, she will graduate from Cab Calloway School of the Arts in Wilmington, where she majors in drama, and classmates and staff alike embrace her. While Maddie is now making plans to transition to college, a debate is raging in Delaware educational circles about how other transgender students are treated in public schools. The controversy revolves around the draft policy of a statewide anti-discrimination regulation sought by Governor John Carney. It generated 11,000 written comments, most in opposition. The key point of contention is a provision that allows schools to not notify parents if a transgender student wants to use a different name than at home. To do so, schools would first be required to take into consideration the safety, health, and well-being of the student.
If this were to be implemented in our schools, we would allow students with no age stipulation, so as young as 4 and 5 years old, to really explore the idea of being an opposite gender or not. And if a parent is deemed unsupportive of that, very easily the school system could decide to get around the parent and begin to interact with that child very differently than their biological reality.
Nicole Tice heads the Delaware Family Policy Council, which led opposition to the policy. Tice and allies say the proposal would illegally elevate the rights of minor children over those of adult parents. They vow to sue the state and any districts that adopt such a policy.
Whatever it takes to really preserve parental authority, we'll be all in.
The umbrella groups for state school boards and superintendents also have concerns. Another vehement foe is state lawmaker Rich Collins, a Republican from Sussex County.
I do not believe that our schools should be in the business of getting into our little children's minds all the way down to age 5 and convincing them that they should live in a way that maybe their parents would not agree with. We're talking about a major change in how our schools would operate. One of the largest policy changes maybe in the history of this state.
Hyperbole aside, Collins rightly describes the polarizing nature of the draft regulation. There's also widespread controversy over the section that says schools will provide access to locker rooms and bathrooms that correspond to students' gender identity or expression. Opposing views were on raw display during a boisterous meeting in February of the team Carney appointed to develop the policy.
You have not the power to dictate what amounts to the emancipation of our children without the consent of their parents, and also without the legal or constitutional authority to do so.
A 12-year-old trans girl does not put the community at risk by using the ladies' room.
The parents who are probably having the biggest problem with this are more than likely the parents who would not accept these children. Most of the children who are homeless.
Wilmington lawyer Mark Papora, a development team member, stresses that many states have enacted similar provisions with little fanfare. He said the provision allowing schools to bypass parents came after much debate. It would only be used on rare occasions, if at all.
There were people who were very concerned about the safety of some students, in particular transgender students, whose parents may not support them, may not agree that they're transgender. And so we thought that that was potentially harmful to students, that it would jeopardize their safety and well-being if the parent was notified before the child was ready to tell the parent about their gender identity. It's very important to LGBT people to have control over who they come out to and when they come out to them. Because frankly, your world can change in a second.
Maddie's stepmother, Andrea Rashbaum, is also on the policy development team. She's not surprised by the backlash. She experienced it firsthand.
We lost friends. We didn't talk to family for a while. And people would say to us, like, well, for our event, could he come as a boy? Because, he's a boy. And I would say, no, she's a girl, and she's going to come as a girl.
But Maddie persevered, and with the help of counseling and medical treatments, is thriving as a girl. At Cab Calloway, she's treated like any other student. She uses the girls' bathrooms and locker rooms without any drama.
It's essential that I have the safety, and every trans kid has the safety to be themselves, use the bathroom that they want, use the pronouns that they want, be called the name they want. Yeah, it's just a human right. In situations where parents might not be accepting, school might be a safe haven for them. It might be a place where they don't feel as judged.
Carney has stated his commitment to schools that are, quote, welcoming, inclusive places where students and staff members alike can flourish. But because there is so much opposition, Rashbaum wonders whether he and top education officials will ultimately adopt the draft policy.
I have concerns that they're going to just let it float away in the wind.
Rashbaum was wrong about the draft policy floating away in the wind. But when I informed her last week that Bunning and the Carney administration overruled the panel on parental notification, she was both surprised and dismayed.
So how's this development seen in the transgender community? Is it a negative, kind of a mixed bag?
Well, the policy is now being designed to offer guidance to districts rather than being a model policy. Rashbaum points out that it's good for transgender students whose parents support them, but for those kids whose parents don't support them, they may be more reluctant to come forward because they face being ostracized or worse at home, unless a district adopts a policy that goes beyond the state's guidance.
All right, thanks, Chris.
The Brandywine Valley SPCA recently announced it intends to buy what used to be the Safe Haven Animal Sanctuary in Georgetown and transform it into a rescue and rehab center. Walt Fenstermacher, who heads up the shelter's Delaware operations, stopped by our studio earlier to share more details. The Brandywine Valley SPCA runs no-kill shelters in Delaware and Pennsylvania. The BVSPCA also won a 5-year sheltering contract with the state of Delaware. And joining me now is Walt Fenstermacher, who heads up the shelter's Delaware operations. Walt, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Why don't you introduce me to our friend here first off?
Well, this is Slurp.
Love the name.
Yeah, he is an adoptable dog out of our Newcastle campus. He's about 2 years old, and we believe that he is a bulldog and a beagle mix. So he's got a unique face, but he's filled with love and looking for a new home.
So sweet and calm. Tell me, BVSPCA recently announced that it's going to purchase the location, the Safe Haven Animal Sanctuary that was in Georgetown. It's been vacant since 2013. Tell me, what what are the plans now for that space?
So the Brandywine Valley SPCA does hope to acquire what was formerly the Safe Haven Animal Sanctuary in Georgetown. That is going to go up for auction on June 9th. So we hope to be there to make the final bid with the community support. We think that we can raise those funds. And our goal is to turn that facility into a rescue and rehab location.
Okay, and so will animals from Newcastle County be down there at some point, or how will that work?
Exactly. So the facility will really be looking to help all the animals that are kind of on the fringe, whether they're looking for a new home or they're not quite ready for one. So animals that are too young that need to be rehabilitated. We're looking at potentially using it as a kitten nursery to help neonatal kittens, but then also animals that are in any of our shelters, whether it's in Georgetown, in Newcastle, or in Westchester, that may need a little bit of help to better prepare them for a new home. So we would transfer them down to the rescue and rehab facility so that we can make any behavioral modifications and training with them to better prepare them for a home, and then they would be returned to the location where they were looking for a new home.
The space has been vacant though since 2013, so there must be a lot of work to kind of get it ready to go.
Yeah, so we think that there's going to be a few $100,000 to really rehabilitate that facility. So a building being empty is never good, and for it to be empty so long, there is some drywall work, some infrastructure work that needs to get done. So we are looking to raise the funds to help with that.
What prompted BVSPCA to even look at that location as a rescue and rehab center? So
we had always had the idea of opening a rescue and rehab location. So we were just really fortunate that this facility came up for auction while we've been contemplating this idea. So the fact that it already has the kenneling facility was made specifically for this use, it better prepares us to make that next step.
Last year there was that accident, a car crashed through the Newcastle facility, which was I think 18 months old at the time, and it crashed to the veterinary clinic side. Where does the shelter in Newcastle stand, and is the veterinary clinic up and running now at full speed?
Yeah, that was a terrible day when I got that phone call. And actually the facility, we are glad to say, is fully operational again. So we have our animal health center that's running throughout the week, and we've also added on to that facility to improve it by introducing new play yards that we built to have indoor play yards, four-season play yards for the dogs, so that we can actually have the dogs go into our play groups.
Okay, and I knew that there was sort of a financial impact too when that car crashed, because a lot of the money made on the veterinary clinic side would pay for services on the shelter side. Have you all caught up, or are you still sort of looking at a deficit?
No, we're actually working in the black, so it's a great thing. So we actually, while our veterinary clinic was down because of the accident, we actually repurposed some of the space in our facility shelter side to really be able to accommodate the clinic services, because it is something that we didn't want to leave the community in a bind where they had been coming to us for animal health services, and then after the accident they wouldn't have been able to. So we wanted to make sure that we had space that we were able to use to continue those services.
And what's the latest? How's the shelter been doing since it's won the statewide contract working with the Office of Animal Welfare? What's the latest there?
Well, it's been going really well. Over the past 2 years, we have been able to maintain over a 90% live release rate. So the animals that are coming in, almost all of them are finding new homes and leaving the shelters. So it's been really a positive experience so far.
I think before BVSPCA came in, there had been just sort of a lot of drama with who was going to be doing animal control and who was going to be working with the state, and then the state picking up all of the animal control duties. Why do you think now the drama has sort of subsided? Were you aware of all of that drama anyway beforehand?
Yeah, so there had always been a little bit of a buzz when it came to animal care in Delaware with different service providers, but really we think that the model that is currently in place with the state overseeing the law enforcement, overseeing the animal control portion of things, and then animal care professionals such as the Brandywine Valley SPCA handling the sheltering side of things, we think it's a really, really good dynamic.
Wonderful. Okay, so you can go to bvspca.org to learn more about the shelter and the acquisition of the former Safe Haven Animal Sanctuary. Walt Fenstermacher, thank you so much for being here and for bringing Slurp.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us both.
The 11,500 square foot facility will be sold at auction this week. Last month, the Longwood Foundation awarded the shelter a $200,000 matching grant in support of the Safe Haven purchase. Donations can be made to bvspca.org/rescue-rehab.
The annual Delaware Wetlands Conference was held recently. The goal is to highlight the risk to our coastal areas and the importance of protecting those areas. One risk environmentalists are always looking at involves shorebird migration. There are groups in the First State working hard to preserve this important bird rest stop.
I'm Kate Hackett. I'm the Executive Director at Delaware Wildlands, and we are a nonprofit land conservation organization. And what we do is we purchase land, ensure that it never gets developed, and then restore it for wildlife habitat, for bird life, for freshwater wetlands, for reforestation, whatever is the particular need in that location. We were founded in 1961, and the founder wanted to ensure that this beautiful estuary was never ever destroyed by industry, by commercial, by pollution resulting from development. So this is the Roberts Farm. We acquired this property a year and a half ago, and it was a home run for us because this property was originally slated for about 400 homes. So this farm is 1,250 acres, which in a developing state and in rapidly developing southern Newcastle County is really a home run. We don't see tracts this size to protect. So we have all types of bird life that depend on this. Waterfowl, we have shorebirds that are starting to come here, which is really fun for us. Delaware is very well known for our shorebird migration. We're located along something that is called a flyway, and basically that's an interstate highway for birds. And we are now able to manage some of the ponds and some of the impoundments on our property to support not only waterfowl, but to create mud flats that the shorebirds need during this time. So what we just saw were 10 or 12 glossy ibis coming out of the marsh, and now we can see some of them flying and starting to rest in the tree. They are migratory birds. And you can see an ibis, or tell an ibis, because it is very dark in color and it has a long curved bill that's used for getting insects out of mud flats. There are two reasons this type of habitat is particularly important. So this type of habitat provides a food source for our bird life, both waterfowl and migratory birds. And if we don't provide that food source, we won't see that wildlife anymore. We won't see those birds, they won't come around. But the other piece is these marshes and freshwater wetlands do the same thing. They're actually like the kidney of the landscape. They are the resource that purifies our water and also provides some level of storm protection. So if we have another Hurricane Sandy that comes to Delaware and hits us this time, if you look at this, this is what it's going to hit instead of the houses that are in a spot. And so we will be able to isolate or buffer some of that development with the marshlands that can store that storm water and protect us. So those two pieces together are really critical to make sure that we protect those marshlands now, but also into the future.
You don't have to rely on Delaware Wildlands to preserve our natural resources. You can help too by participating in citizen science projects where you collect data for organizations like Delaware Wildlands so they can use it in the future.
Music has the power to inspire. For our first experience this week, we meet an artist who uses jazz music not just to inspire her painting, but as the subject of it. Ellen Priest paints music, interpreting it into color and motion that plays out on multiple levels.
My work obviously is abstract. It's all based on jazz. And I use jazz as my subject matter. For me, it's like a mountain landscape or a person sitting for a portrait. So these are really pictures of the music. This current series, it's based on an hour-long jazz suite called The River by Ryan Cohan. In this music I can hear African, I can hear New Orleans, I can hear Aaron Copland, I can hear Chicago blues. Conceptually, each of these pieces, each square is one measure, and that's how I build it structurally. So then the next step is that I start painting brush studies. And the brush studies are less than a minute. I have a stack of paper on my big work table. I'm building a language of forms for that series. So then that becomes my vocabulary. The next step, I'm literally transferring the image with an art carbon paper and a stylus. And then I paint into that as if it's one image. I use color to establish the position of forms in space. Color always moves. By the time I get to the front of the piece, I use a full palette. which means something in there has red, yellow, and blue. The title suggests to them that it's about music. But even if they haven't heard the music or anything else, they say, wow, this is really musical. So something's getting across. The point of it is that the jazz evokes in me, as a listener, what I would like my work to evoke in its viewers. I want people to be uplifted. People leave my exhibitions just feeling this kind of joy. That's what they've said to me over and over and over. If I had to pick one part that's my favorite, composing the big ones. It's kind of like choreographing and wondering how the forms are gonna play over each other. It's the thinking and imagining part at its most intense. Jazz can transform all kinds of difficult emotions into something you can deal with, and it brings joy into things that may not have joy. Somehow I seem to be capturing that. There is a rightness to it. At some level it goes ding. You know, I don't know. It's mysterious even to me.
Ellen's been working with jazz music since 1990 and has had gallery shows of her previous work. You can check out the progress of this current series and get news when it goes on display by visiting her online at ellenpriest.com.
That is first for this week. If you want to check out our coverage of the first full-scale Delaware sports betting, go to WHYY.org/news. For Chris Barish and Shirley Min, I'm Mark Eichman. Have a great week.